Greetings and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Persistent Chat Server with Microsoft Lync Server 2013. In this video presentation, you're going to be introduced to the Microsoft Lync Server 2013's Persistent Chat. We're going to start off this video with a high-level overview of Persistent Chat, and then we're going to take a look at the architecture and the services involved. You'll be introduced to some of Microsoft's best practices with Persistent Chat, and then we're going to wrap it up with a demonstration on configuration and deployment. The Persistent Chat Server with Microsoft Lync Server 2013 is the new and improved version of the group chat server that we had with Lync Server 2010. But as you're going to see in the demonstration, the chat functionality is now built right into your Lync client, and the chat server-side support is integrated into your topology and into your Lync deployment. So it's more tightly integrated with Lync Server 2013. Persistent Chat allows administrators and end users the ability to create rooms that can be used for topic-based conversations. The content inside of a chat room, which can include text, files, or possibly hyperlinks, the content persists over an extended period of time, so you don't have to be there for the conversation in real time, although it does support it. So if somebody has provided an entry or posted something into the chat room, I don't have to be there when it happens. I can see this after the fact because the content is going to persist. When you create a chat room, whether as an administrator or as an end user, you're creating a little virtual room environment that can be used for topic-based conversations. You typically want to provide a complete name and description summary for the room, so people know what that room is used for, what type of conversations are being hosted in it. One of the big advantages that we have with using chat rooms is that it improves communication and also your information availability. Persistent Chat allows users to efficiently share information based upon their schedule, when they're available. Because of the content persisting over an extended period of time, you don't have to be there to participate in a conversation. You can jump in and out of the conversation as you see fit based upon your schedule. So you don't have to be online simultaneously with another individual to chat with them. You can post the communication, and then when they see it later on, they can respond back at their convenience. One of the terms that you're going to bump into is called backchat. Backchat is a configurable number of chat history messages that pop up or automatically load up when you enter into a chat room. So it's like the prior history of chat messages, which are available to you as an end user. Another useful feature that we have is having the ability to receive notifications based upon settings that we define or conditions that we define through client-side filters. For example, if I have a post that has certain message content, we could get notified. Persistent Chat provides a platform on which users can efficiently and effectively share information. And that information can be in the form of text-based posts, it can be file uploads, or it could also be web-based links that bring you somewhere else with information on a certain topic. And as an end user, you don't have to subscribe or follow every chat room. You only follow the chat rooms of interest to you. And with the use of client-side filters, you can also be notified when there's posts that meet certain criteria. In order to use chat rooms at Rock Fitness, we have to enable persistent chat within the environment, and we have to deploy the servers. So as we're going to see, you're going to have to define the chat servers in your topology. You have to deploy the chat servers, and you also have to deploy the configuration and the policy settings. Before we deploy our persistent chat at Rock Fitness, we have to meet with our legal team because we're not sure about the compliance requirements or regulations. But keep in mind that the Microsoft Lync Persistent Chat has an optional component called the compliance service that allows us to store chat activity to a separate SQL database. Let's take a look at the network architecture for persistent chat. Before deploying Persistent Chat, there's several things that we have to be aware of. You want to be familiar with the roles that are involved with Microsoft Lync and Persistent Chat, and also be aware of how they're deployed within the network. You should also understand how the clients communicate with Persistent Chat servers by way of the front-end servers. You should also understand how your chat pools support your Microsoft Lync front-end server pools, and you should also understand the scalability requirements. Because your Persistent Chat server stores information in SQL, you also want to understand how SQL Server gets deployed and also take a look at some of the high availability requirements in your environment. When you're designing and deploying your Lync Server 2013 topology, the Persistent Chat server is an optional role. You do not have to deploy it with Lync Server 2013, but you would deploy it if you want to use chat rooms. With the Enterprise Edition of Lync Server 2013, the Persistent Chat services runs on a dedicated pool. It cannot be co-located. If you have the standard edition of Microsoft Lync Server, it can be co-located. You also want to be aware that the persistent chat server pool is reliant or dependent upon the Lync Server pool to route messages over to it. When your clients are communicating with chat rooms, they're using the Extensible Chat Communication over SIP, XCCOS. So your clients are communicating over with the front-end servers, and the front-end servers are configured to route the traffic over to a persistent chat server pool, which can be one server or it could be many servers working together in a pool. Your chat server pools are very scalable. You can have up to 8 servers in a pool with up to 4 active servers within that pool. A chat pool can support multiple pools simultaneously, and if you have multiple front-end pools within your environment, you can also have multiple chat pools if you require them. Let's go back to our numbers once again. The maximum number of servers that you can have in a pool is 8, with 4 active servers maximum. So 4 active and 4 passive. So if you have an environment where you have a stretched site, you could have 4 active servers in one data center, and if there's a physical problem with that data center, we can have the other servers become active at the separate other data center. Microsoft is sizing out your persistent chat servers to support 20,000 concurrent active users per server. When designing your database storage for your persistent chat server and also the optional compliance database, Microsoft strongly recommends using a standalone database server. Now, you don't have to do this, you can co-locate it, but the recommendation to use a standalone server or a dedicated box is because of your disk requirements. The chat server database and your compliance database can use up a lot of space, and they can use it up quickly. So if you are going to co-locate them, you want to make sure that you're monitoring your disk space on your Microsoft SQL servers. If you need to provide a high level of availability for your SQL Server databases, the recommended approach for Microsoft would be to use SQL mirroring. And this works out great if you have a split site, because with SQL mirroring you don't have the latency requirements or VLAN requirements like we had with our clustering, back with Lync Server 2010. For our next topic, we're going to take a look at our service architecture. When we deploy the persistent chat at Carverock Fitness, there's 2 services that we have to be aware of. And the first one is called persistent chat, also known as the channel service. That's the main heart of the product. The second service is called the compliance service, which is used when you deploy the compliance with a separate backend database for maintaining your compliance data. Both of these services would run on each of the servers in your front-end persistent chat services pool. When you deploy the persistent chat server within your environment, the persistent chat service is the heart of the product. It handles the registration and the listing of online participants within a chat room. It handles the acceptance of incoming messages. It also handles chat room invitations, searches, and new content notifications. It does a lot of other things also, but I think you get the point. The persistent chat service maintains content on a back-end persistent chat store, a SQL Server database. And it also maintains uploaded file content in a persistent chat file store. The second persistent chat service that we have is called the compliance service. And this is considered an optional component. Well, it's optional, meaning that you don't have to use the compliance features. If you deploy the persistent chat compliance, it records user activity such as if you join or leave a chat room, or if you're reading or posting messages within the chat room. The compliance service also maintains file uploads inside of the compliance file store. So the compliance service is responsible for archiving chat content, and it also handles a lot of the recording of event activity within the store. Once we've deployed persistent chat within the organization, the front-end servers are going to have a couple of additional web components that run on top of IS deployed to them. We have the persistent chat web services for file uploads and downloads. We also have a web service for chat room management. These are all co-located on your front-end servers. If you're looking to cut down on the number of servers within your deployment, you may take a look at some of the co-location support that we have with Microsoft Lync and the persistent chat. Well, first of all, if you have the standard edition of Microsoft Lync Server, the persistent chat server, the compliance, and the database support can all be co-located on that standard edition server. If you're running the enterprise edition of Microsoft Lync Server, your persistent chat server has to be installed on a separate dedicated pool. If you deploy the compliance feature, that gets installed on the persistent chat server pool. So the persistent chat and the compliance coexist together. The persistent chat service and your compliance service both require their own separate databases. Now, those can be co-located on the same SQL server. They can also be on separate dedicated boxes. When deploying the persistent chat services, we have several different topologies that we can choose from. If you have the standard edition of Microsoft Lync Server, you can install the persistent chat on the standard edition box and you can use your SQL Server Express Edition for your database storage. The standard edition of Microsoft Lync Server can also use a dedicated persistent chat server. With the Enterprise Edition of Microsoft Lync Server, you have to use a separate chat server pool, and you can have a single server in that pool or up to 8 servers in the pool, with 4 servers active maximum. In this diagram you see an example of an architectural overview of persistent chat. This is a diagram that you'll find readily available out at TechNet. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see that I have a Lync 2013 client. The Lync 2013 client has the chat functionality built right into it. You don't have to install any other client-side software. The client is communicating over with the Lync pool using the extensible chat communication over SIP. And you can see that the pool is communicating over with the persistent chat server pool. So this would be an example of the Enterprise Edition using a dedicated pool. And in this diagram, it looks like we have 4 servers in our pool, with a persistent chat server database on the back end. We can also have a persistent chat server pool handling traffic from multiple Lync pools. If we were to add the compliancing feature, it would run here on my persistent chat front-end servers, and I would have a separate database being used to maintain the compliance data. Now that we've had an overview of persistent chat, let's take a look at the administration of our chat server and the chat server roles. When it comes to the administration of persistent chat, we have 6 different roles used for administration, 4 user roles and 2 administrative roles. The first role that we have listed is a user level role, and it's called Creator. A creator has the ability or the permissions to create chat rooms. If you worked for an organization that was using ethical walls and had created different categories of chat rooms, you could have a user that's possibly a creator on one of your categories but not on another. So when you make somebody a creator, you're adding them as a creator on a list of categories. So they could create chat rooms in that category. If a person is a creator, they can also assign managers to manage the chat room. And if you create a chat room, you're automatically added as a manager to that room. So if you have an individual within your organization that you want to be able to create chat rooms within a category, you may want to make them a creator. Persistent chat has another user role that allows users to manage the properties of a chat room, and it's called Manager. If you're a chat room manager, you can modify the membership list and also modify the chat room managers list. A chat room manager can add themselves as a presenter or as a participant in a chat room. They also have the ability to disable a chat room. The next user level role that we have for chat rooms is called Member. These are users that can see a chat room and they can subscribe to it. So they have the ability to participate in a chat room. So for example, they could possibly post to the chat room. The Persistent Chat Services also has another special role designated for rooms called auditoriums, where we have special people that are presenters. In a room designated as an auditorium, a regular member user cannot post content, get content, or search for content, but a presenter can. As we take a look at the administrative roles, we only really have a couple of administrative roles for chat room administration. And the first one is called CS Administrator. A CS Administrator is a top-level enterprise administrator for Microsoft Lync Server 2013. Microsoft has added in a new administrative role for persistent chat administration. It's called the Persistent Chat Administrator role. If you're a user or a member of a group that has this role assigned, you can manage persistent chat servers. You should also be able to administer that server remotely, connecting into the Windows PowerShell-based environment. If you are a persistent chat administrator, you should be able to manage chat rooms, as well as being able to create and manage chat room categories. As you can imagine, this is a very powerful account for chat room administration. You can mark chat rooms as being disabled, you can create chat rooms, you can define who can create chat rooms, you can also define managers of chat rooms. Let's take a look at some of Microsoft's best practices for persistent chat. As we deploy the persistent chat at Rock Fitness, there's several best practices that we're going to implement. Let's take a look. If you work in an environment where you have to maintain ethical walls, Microsoft Lync Server 2013 with persistent chat supports this by creating categories. At Rock Fitness, we don't have any ethical walls that we have to maintain. So what we're going to do is use one category, and we'll create all of our chat rooms within that category, and then control access to the chat rooms. We're going to use the membership list to either grant or restrict access to the chat rooms. In most organizations, you typically enable users the ability to create chat rooms so that they can implement or they can create discussion rooms at their convenience. This is what we're going to do at Rock Fitness. And we're going to do this by making the creators list the same as the allowed members list. And this is going to allow our users the ability to create chat rooms whenever they need to. Another best practice is to use proper names and descriptions for our chat rooms. It's how the users identify what they're for. With Microsoft Lync Server 2013's persistent chat, we have the ability to use add-ins inside of the chat rooms. The chat room managers and the creators can choose from a list of allowed add-ins that have been registered. Add-ins allow us to bring in data from external sources, like for example data from a streaming application. So the recommendation is to create the appropriate add-ins to enhance the experience within the chat rooms. Let's take a look at the deployment and the configuration of persistent chat. In order to deploy persistent chat within our environment, there's several steps that we have to go through to accomplish this. Let's take a look. The persistent chat services is now considered a role inside of Microsoft Lync 2013. So in order to deploy persistent chat servers, you have to add them into your topology by using the topology builder. You also have to define if you want to deploy the compliance services also. Once you've published your information from your topology back into CMS, you can then install your persistent chat server. And the install for the persistent chat server is like a regular Lync install. You have to install a copy of CMS down to the server first, then you would install the Microsoft Lync Server and then install a valid certificate. So it uses the same bootstrap that you use for a front-end server. Once you have the persistent chat server up and running, you want to define your administrators through role-based access control. The final steps would be configuring the persistent chat server, coming in through either the control panel or through the Lync Server management shell. Now for the fun part, let's take a look at a demonstration on deploying and configuring persistent chat. I've just switched over to my Lync front-end server, and we're going to go into our topology builder because we need to add the persistent chat pool into our topology. So here we're going to launch the topology builder, and then we're going to choose to download our topology from the existing deployment. And here we're going to click on OK. Next we'll define the name of the topology file that we're going to be using. I'm going to choose my existing Carverock Fitness TBXML file. And then as I expand my topology, you can see that I have my Scottsdale and my Phoenix central sites. Underneath the Scottsdale central site, we're going to navigate down to our Lync Server 2013 persistent chat pools. To create a persistent chat pool, we're going to right-click and then choose the option for a new persistent chat pool. And then we'll define whether we're going to use a multiple computer pool or a single computer pool. If you're going to use a multiple computer pool, you're going to have to come up with a virtual name for that pool. And then we can load balance the traffic to the servers within the pool. In the demonstration, we're going to use a single computer pool, and we'll provide the name crf chat1.carverockfitness.com. So this fully qualified domain name is getting mapped down to the IP address of the server inside of DNS. So here, let's click on Next. The next property sheet, we define the properties of the persistent chat pool. The first thing that we have to identify is a display name for the pool itself. I'm going to call this one Scottsdale Chat. The next property we have is the persistent chat port. This is the port that your persistent chat service listens on. I'm going to stick with port 5041, the default. On the next selection box, we can enable compliance. This requires us to have a separate database for the compliance service. And then finally, at the bottom of the window, I'm going to use this pool as the default for all of my sites. I'm only going to use one chat pool for the entire Carverock Fitness organization. Let's click on Next. On the next property sheet, we define the SQL store that we're going to use for storing the database content for our persistent chat server. I'm going to select my SQL Server store. And you'll notice down below that you can enable SQL Server store mirroring. We'll click on Next. On the next property sheet, we're being prompted to define the file store. And this is used to maintain file upload content. For example, it maintains files uploaded into a chat room. I'm going to select the option to create a new file store. We'll then specify the file server FQDN. Here I have crfsql1.carverockfitness.com. And my DNS server has an entry that maps the hostname crfsql1.carverockfitness.com down to its IP address. And then we're going to specify our file share, which I have called chat file share. Now this file share, I've already created it, and I've given my administrative account full access to the file share directory structure. Let's click on Next. On the next property sheet, we select the next hop server for traffic from our persistent chat pool. As you remember, a persistent chat pool is dependent upon a front-end server pool. So in this case here, my next hop pool is going to be pool.carverockfitness.com over in Scottsdale. Now that I've created my topology, we have to publish these changes back over to the central management store. So we're going to go to the option to publish our topology, and then we'll click on Next. I'm being prompted to configure or create my database over on crfsql1. And you can see that my publishing is now in progress. So we've published our topology successfully and created our databases. Our next step is to switch over to the server that we're going to install. And to begin the installation process, we have to install Microsoft Lync Server on that box. Let's take a look. We're now ready to deploy the persistent chat server. So I've just switched over to the persistent chat server, and I have to run the installation for Microsoft Lync Server. I'm now going to switch over to my D drive, which has the installation media for Microsoft Lync Server 2013. Here I'm getting prompted for the location where I'm going to install Microsoft Lync Server core components to. So I will select the default program files Microsoft Lync Server 2013 and then click on Install. We're going to accept the licensing agreement, click on OK, and then sit back for a couple of moments while the core components get installed. After the installation of the core components, the deployment wizard for Lync Server 2013 should launch automatically. Since I'm installing an additional server within an existing environment, I don't have to worry about preparing Active Directory, so we can click on the option to install or update Lync Server systems immediately. You'll notice here that it's broken down into several different steps. Step number 1, we install the local configuration store. Step number 2, you then run setup. Step number 3, you request a certificate and then assign it to your persistent chat server. And then you can start up your services. So let's install our local configuration store. I'm going to retrieve mine directly from CMS. And as you can see, we have a copy of CMS installed locally to our local instance of SQL Server 64-bit Express Edition. And then we'll move on to step number 2, which is setting up Microsoft Lync Server. So, step number 2, we're going to install and activate Microsoft Lync Server. We're going to click on Run. The install is going to look to my local copy of CMS to see how it's supposed to install. So it's a very hands-off installation, and it should also be a lot faster than installing the CMS. So here we're going to click on Finish. In step number 3, we're going to request a certificate and assign it to our services. So here I'm going to request a default certificate. In my demonstration environment, I have an Enterprise Certificate Authority from Microsoft, so I should be able to detect the CA and send the request immediately to it to get a certificate. I'm able to automatically discover this thing inside of Active Directory. I don't need to provide any alternate credentials to connect. And what I'm going to do here is give my certificate a friendly name. Here you define the bit length, and 2048 is recommended. Next, we'll define our organizational name. We'll specify the organizational unit, which is IT. We'll provide our country code. United States, and the state is Arizona. And we've got our city, which is Scottsdale. On the next property sheet, I can see my subject name and any subject alternative names. On this property sheet, I can define any additional subject alternative names that I require on my certificate. We'll click on Next again. And here I should be able to obtain a certificate automatically. So here I'll click on Next and then on Finish. And this will automatically launch the assignment wizard for me so I can assign the certificate to my persistent chat server. We'll click on Finish one more time, and then we'll close out of the certificate wizard. For our next step, we're going to start our services, and then we'll click on Next. And this will automate the process of starting my services for me. And then my next step will be going in and taking a look at my services. So let's click on Run, and we'll launch into our services applet. And as you can see inside of the console, you can see the Lync services are running. We have the Lync Server centralized logging service, the Lync Server persistent chat, and the Lync Server replicator agent. We should be good to go. At this point, we now have a persistent chat server up and running inside of our Lync Server topology. Let's take a look at the control panel and the configuration settings that are available to us. We're going to switch over to our Lync frontend server. Now that we've switched over to the Microsoft Lync server, we're going to open up our control panel and take a look at some of the persistent chat configuration settings that we have in the control panel. So here we're going to log in as administrator, and we will provide our password. From within the control panel, we're going to navigate down to persistent chat. You'll notice that at the top of the window I have category, add-in, persistent chat policy, and persistent chat configuration. And let's start off by defining a category. And it reads, start here, chat rooms are scoped by category. Create a new category to begin configuring persistent chat. Microsoft defines categories as logical structures for organizing your chat rooms. So your category defines a default set of access control lists for controlling the users and the user groups who create or join chat rooms within this category. And we can also use categories to create ethical boundaries or ethical walls between different segments of the organization. So when you're creating your chat room categories, a chat room category can contain chat rooms, but it can't contain other subcategories. To create a new category, we're going to click on New. We'll select a persistent chat service over at the site called Scottsdale. And it brings me to the properties to create my new category, and we'll start off by creating the name. At Covrog Fitness, we don't require any ethical boundaries, so we're just going to create one category called Covrog Fitness. And here we can provide a description, but that is optional. Underneath the description, we can specify if we want to enable the ability to use invitations for our chat rooms. If invitations are enabled for a chat room, when a new member is added to the chat room, they receive a notification in their chat client. We can also specify if we want to enable file uploads within a chat room. At the bottom of the console, we also have the ability to enable a chat history. Enabling chat history enables the chat content to become persistent inside of the chat room. Now, keeping in mind that if you do have compliance enabled, the content will be stored inside of your compliance archive either way. Let's scroll down a little bit further. Towards the bottom of the console, you see that I have membership, allowed members, and we also have denied members. So this is where we have the ability to define Active Directory accounts or groups that we can add as members or deny as members to the chat rooms within this category. And at the bottom of the window, you can see that we can define creators within a category. These are people that can create chat rooms. And let's click on Commit. Let's switch over to the Add-ins tab. On the Add-ins tab, I can define the add-ins that will be available inside of my chat rooms. In order to provide an add-in or register it within this category, you have to click on New and then define the persistent chat service. And then down below, this is where you define your new add-in and you specify the name and also the corresponding URL. and you're limited to HTTP and HTTPS for this. Let's go over to our persistent chat policies. When you're defining persistent chat policies, they're very basic. As you apply your policies, they can be applied globally, at the site, the pool, or even down to the user level. Let's take a look at a policy. You'll notice that inside of the policy, you can enable persistent chat. Let's commit our changes. Now let's take a look at our persistent chat configuration settings. With the persistent chat configuration, you have the ability to apply policies globally, at the site, and even down to the pool level. Let's take a look at a global policy. When you define a policy, the first thing you do is define the name. And you can see here that the name of this policy is called global. Next we have chat history. This defines the number of chat messages that will be processed for each chat room when you first enter the chat room. So it's the number of chat messages that are cached by your chat server, and the default number for that is 30, but you can modify that. The next property that you see is the maximum file size, and that's defining the maximum size of a file that can be uploaded into your chat room, and that defaults to 20 meg. We also have an option to configure the limit for participant updates. Your persistent chat server will send updates to your clients, letting them know who's inside of the chat room. Well, until we hit this limit. So the limit indicates the maximum number of participants in a given room. Beyond this point, the persistent chat server stops sending roster updates to the connected clients. So we don't get any more updates in regards to who's present inside of the chat room. At the bottom of the console, we see something called a room management URL. And this can be customized for the process of creating rooms or for room management. So if your organization wants to customize the room creation experience, the URL provides you an entry where you can point to a custom application that you've developed, possibly by using a software developer's kit. I'm going to click on Commit. And then let's close out of our control panel. Before we close out of the demonstration, let's take a quick look over at the Lync client and see what it looks like when we connect into our chat rooms. I've just switched over to my Microsoft Lync client, and from on my desktop, I'm going to launch my Microsoft Lync 2013 client software. I'm logging in as my account, S. McCasey, at carverockfitness.com. You can see that my client is contacting the server and attempting to sign in, and I was able to log in seamlessly with minimal effort. And you can now see that I have the icon that represents my group chat. So if I click on the link for chat rooms, you can see how this has been integrated into your Lync client. And then down below I can see followed, members of, new, and a little further over to the right you can see that I have an add button. Let's click on it. So here I have choices where if I want to follow a room, create a chat room, create a new topic feed, search the room history, or I can also go to my chat room options. Well, that's the end of this video, and also of the Lync Server video series. We've covered a lot of content, and hopefully you've learned a lot about Microsoft Lync Server 2013 installation and configuration. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next Lync Server video series.